In the basic elements of nature, water seems to be the most versatile, in both what it creates biologically and how it can be utilized in fiction. However, do you know which water-based formation has the potential to be the most practical, powerful, and pretty tool in battle?
Tidal wave?
Nah, too uncontrollable.
Is it hydro pump?
Not what I'm looking for. Guess again.
Maybe water gun.
Okay, now you're just naming Pokemon attacks. Come on, get creative.
Or maybe it's hot tea that's boiled so hot that it burns your mouth when you drink it.
Alright, you're out of guesses. We're talking about the almighty bubble techniques.
Really? Bubbles? What can they do? They just pop in your face and make a kind of noise.
Don't question the strength of fighting with bubbles. Look around any genre of fiction that suits you and you'll see how multi-talented they are. While they may seem frail and in reality are barely useful, all sorts of media decided to make these orbs of gas and liquid handy tools in battle. So we're going to be looking at the most notable characters that find a way to enter a fight knowing these watery spheres are for more than just aesthetics and children's birthday parties. Now get ready to hear about the most memorable, strong, and creative bubble-based attacks from the top 10 characters that fight with bubbles. Number 10. Bub, and by extension his palette swap brother Bob, from Bubble Bobble. This classic arcade and NES action platformer had these dragons that shoot bubbles instead of fire or something else you'd expect from a dragon. The reason being, when Bub and Bob had their girlfriends stolen by a villain, Baron von Blubba, he turned them into bubble dragons. Why would you turn them into dragons with powers? I understand bubbles seem weak, but making them powerless dragons seems like it would have less of a chance of backfiring. You possibly made it easier for them to beat all of these enemies on their pathway to your boss level. The abilities these dragons gain is actually terrifying, in which they capture their enemies in bubbles and pop them. Nothing will remain of the enemy, only random food. Food that does not resemble what was put in the bubble in the first place. It's like Majin Buu's chocolate bean. They essentially eat their foes in a convenient, familiar food form, all because their opponent was trapped in a bubble. Number 9. Riku from Darkstalkers, who has a random O at the end of his name that I never pronounce. This fish creature has lots of aquatic abilities to go along with his fishy attacks. One of his attacks, called Water Jail, is emitting a giant bubble that can encase his opponent. When stuck in the bubble, his opponent's health bar will slowly drain until it pops or Riku pops it. He cannot use this move any time when fighting since it requires 1 bar of meter, so it's bound to the mechanics of a fighting game having noticeable weaknesses and a time limit before popping. However, we did see it with unrestricted use in the very bad USA Network cartoon for Darkstalkers in the 90s. In the cartoon, he can capture someone in the bubble and jail them indefinitely. Shenko was unable to escape without Riku letting her go. Also, she's less blue than I remember. Without video game limitations, Riku has the ultimate trap in this cartoon. This is also the same cartoon that had the running gag where characters would comment that Riku looks strangely attractive for a fish man.
Yes. Yes, he does.
No, don't look directly into his gaze. He's too handsome despite being mostly fish. He isn't meant to be attractive.
What do you mean fish people can't be attractive? People are beautiful because of what's inside.
Hate to break it to you, but fish people don't exist to my knowledge. In the context of the Darkstalkers games, he's actually rumored to be the last of his species, so technically by calling him strangely attractive, we're saying all fish men are beautiful. However, then he discovered more living merfolk, so feel free to overanalyze this statement further. Number 8. Wart from Super Mario Bros. 2. Wart is the only video game final boss that we know of that primarily utilizes this deadly ability. However, there's a reason this final boss is low on the list. His attack plan is so uninventive. He spits bubbles at an angle toward the player and that's about it. Sometimes he changes the angle slightly, but his techniques are lacking. Still, he earned his spot since he shows how the most dangerous character in the game can just attack with something people generally find harmless. If only he did not have to open his mouth so widely to release these bubbles, since his only known weakness is throwing vegetables in his mouth, which hurt and eventually defeat him.
That's not a good message for children whose parents are trying to teach them to eat vegetables.
Mario never claimed to teach educational lessons, and when the series did, no one was too fond of it. Plus, you never know, the vegetables could be poisoned.
You know, I don't make dinner and say, hey, are these vegetables poisoned? I should really think about that before I eat them.
Number 7. Every Pokemon that can learn Bubble Beam. Bubble Beam is basically the same from every Pokemon, so none of them really stand out. It's more the fact that these monster animals found a way to make bubbles harmful by spraying them at a high speed directly at your face. It looks like these bubbles are as powerful as pelting a bunch of snowballs at someone, or even an oversized BB gun. If I had to choose just one Pokemon, I'd say the Squirtle evolutionary line, even though they can only learn Bubble Beam through TM in the first gen games. They only naturally learn the weaker version of this attack, Bubble. I think of them mainly because if Squirtle was your first Pokemon, it likely also means that Bubble was your first Water-type attack, since it's the first move that Squirtle learns before even Water Gun. This was our introduction to water attacks, a few slow-moving bubbles that deal very low damage. Bubble is the worst water-type anything in Pokemon.
Does Magikarp know it?
What I meant to say was Bubble is one of the weakest water-type Pokemon things. The point is, if your water Pokemon only knows Bubble as its only water-type attack, you are likely in trouble.
Each and every Pokemon is special in his or her own way.
Yes, we've all read the speech from Karen in the Johto Elite Four, and if you're so sure about that, how would you fare in a battle with just your level 100 Blastoise that only knows Bubble,
Well, he is fighting a level 28 Onix, so I think he'd be okay.
Number 6. Bubble Man from Mega Man. Oh wow, a Mega Man villain named Bubble Man. I wonder what he fights with.
Flamethrower!
Yeah, then why would he have Bubble in his name?
To confuse his enemies. Duh.
He's not allowed to do that. He's a Mega Man villain. He has to follow a not confusing pattern as is tradition. Bubble Man shoots large bouncing bubbles that have an arc to them, which bounce while he uses his normal buster projectiles to force Mega Man to multitask. And beating him gives Mega Man the ability to roll bubbles like bowling balls. Later iterations of Bubble Man upgraded him a bit, where he could now make larger bubbles and entrap things inside of them. Unfortunately for him, these new techniques do not make him more threatening. I always found it funny that Bubble Man's main weakness is Metal Man's buzzsaw, since logically that is an unnecessarily extreme way to pop bubbles. You can usually just poke bubbles with a stick to pop them, but nope, Mega Man fires up the power tools to make sure they are eliminated and never returned. Number 5. Pokmon from Digimon. Various Digimon can use bubbles in their attacks, but Pokmon has the most memorable one to me. Maybe it's that he fires one large, fast bubble capable of mild destruction, or maybe it was that 2D shooting game named after the attack on the old Fox Kids website. The attack itself is called Boom Bubble, and it earned its name. It's like a sonic boom, in bubble form. And he does not just produce the bubble out of nowhere like some of the other entries. He has a full step-by-step process. How does it work again?
Well, he blows the biggest kind of bubble. His mouth gets super, super wide and just spits it out, and then he's hit with a recoil and he goes way back like whoosh.
Huh. Articulate description. Now I remember why you lead a segment every 4.5 months. Number 4. SpongeBob SquarePants, or technically the Invincibubble, since the only time he legitimately fought with bubbles was in his superhero persona in the second SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. Here, he used a bubble wand on his head to fight with bubbles, and nullify other weapons like cannonballs by capturing them in bubbles. However, even if he did not directly fight with Bubbles at some point in the series, I may have still put him on this list, since SpongeBob takes his bubble blowing hobby to the extreme. His bubbles could have been considered a lethal weapon from the start. The second episode of the series with the bubble stand showed that he could make any construct capable of unintentional destruction with his technique. Did anyone else try doing that technique as a child? I could never complete it due to that one part where you have to combine your eyes into one eye.
I think you might have trouble doing that.
Come on, was it truly insane to think that I could one day accomplish this?
A little bit.
Curse the physical limitations of the human body. Beyond that, he can create life with bubbles. Remember Bubble Buddy? SpongeBob just breathed life into an animate bubble soap. And on Leif Erikson Day, no less. Number 3. Khalifa from One Piece. She fights by excreting soap bubbles. Just normal sudsy soap bubbles typically used for cleaning. Which opens up the question, what could soap bubbles possibly fight?
They defeat mildew, soap scum, and the power of evil.
If evil came in the form of mold, but enough about what she would do if she was just the Scrubbing Bubbles mascot. While her soap bubbles are not purely offensive, their main powers are meant to be supplementary and stop Khalifa's opponents right in their tracks. First, she gathers the bubbles with her soap sheep skill that readies her stronger techniques, which is the trade-off for looking silly. The bubbles can be used to halt their victim with the technique Relaxing Bubbles. Besides immobilizing the opponent, it cuts their strength in half, so even when they can move around, their body may not be in a condition to fight. However, her ultimate technique is called Golden Bubbles, where she covers you in suds that essentially clean your body to a point where you're completely smooth. She makes you look like alien Mr. Burns. Even if part of your body is hit, you'll still feel the effects. In this state, you'll slide around like soap and have trouble grasping onto anything. Combining these bubbly moves with her skilled assassin attacks, Khalifa has found a way to follow up on her restricting powers. Her only downfall comes with water, which washes away the soap bubbles and nullifies her techniques. Khalifa herself is weak to lightning. Wait, Nami just electrocuted her. That's a weakness all humans have. Number 2. Caesar Zappelli from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Are you ready for the manliest bubbles you've ever seen? Caesar has control of the ripple, which basically allows him to infuse energy into any object. So like a champ, he chooses simple bubbles. He can fire bubbles out of his gloves, and using the ripple, he can create all kinds of deadly bubbles. Just go down the list of attacks. Bubble Launcher, which is his go-to attack where he fires bubbles that are stronger than your typical shonen anime punch. Bubble Lenses fires a series of immobile bubbles that makes a complex laser beam. They're both powerful and scientific. And finally, there's Bubble Cutter, which is a barrage of bubble buzzsaws. They can even home in with their gliding variation. You are automatically deadly when you have something that can slice in half with ease and also follows your foe indefinitely. Sure, it did not work out in the end for Frieza's Death Saucers or that ninja with the heat-seeking shuriken from Yu Yu Hakusho, but Caesar was never as frivolous as they were with this attack. His ultimate bubble-themed skill used in JoJo's contains massive spoilers, so let's just say he represents the bubbles proudly. Number 1. I guess there's only one option left, even if we've made her a mild running gag in my videos. She did revolutionize bubble attacks in anime, so why not?
Is it really who I think it is?
Yup, it's Joanna the Bubble Lady.
No, that's not who it is.
Fine. Number 1. Sailor Mercury from Sailor Moon. Sailor Mercury's bubble manipulation stems from her control over the element of water, and consequently, ice. Her most recognizable move was the first one she used in the series, where she scatters an array of bubbles all over the area to create a mist that obscures the vision of the enemy. This attack is fondly known as
Mercury Bubbles!
Actually, since the old Deek dub is now defunct, we just call it Bubble Spray now, or Shavone Spray to go by the Japanese name.
That isn't as fun to say.
Going by the manga, it's known as Mercury Aqua Mist, but the original anime showed that Bubble Spray was a highly versatile move. However, at first it could only form that cold mist, which was solely used as a distraction for the other Sailor Guardians. What's Mercury to do when she's stuck in a fight alone with only a support move? She once challenged Nephrite single-handedly, and no progress was made since she only had the bubbles. Yet, in that same episode, the monster of the day copies her bubble ability and everyone dodges it like it's some sort of deadly attack. Maybe she's been using it wrong this whole time. Later in the episode, Sailor Moon, Mercury, and Mars combine their attacks to make a flaming tiara with bubbles rotating around it. Wouldn't the bubbles just cool down the fire, making the attack weaker? Either her bubbles are secretly helpful, or her friends just wanted her to be included. The attack goes on the offensive when she gains the ability to freeze the mist that these bubbles create, leaving her opponent stuck in a block of ice. She also has a stronger variant of bubble spray freezing, which just seems to freeze the ice more, but hey, whatever works, even if the foe can break out of it in some cases. The bubbles even work for defense, since she can use them to protect herself from danger. Hot lava means nothing when you have a magical bubble shield that safeguards you. Her bubbles alone cover offense, defense, and support, showing how easily she can fit into any battle, and that does not even include her other water-based attacks. With the constant evolution of her bubbles, they became her iconic attack, which leads her to our #1 character that fights with bubbles. So what did you think of these choices? Are you thinking of any characters that fight with bubbles that we did not discuss? Let me know.
Me? Because I can blow bubbles in my chocolate milk.
No one is going to comment that you should have been a selection. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Here are a few outtake blooper things if you like post-video content, and we will see you in the next video. No, in today's video we're talking about the almighty and sometimes deadly bubble attacks.
What's next? Bubbles for microphones?
I get it. Wart's main method of attack is spitting bubbles at you.
Spitting is bad. No spitting.
Yes, we know your opinion on his attack already.
Did I say that before?
Yep.
Oh, that's what happens when you don't have me in the video for 2 months.
Khalifa has the power to clean her opponent.
You say clean, but it sounds dirty. Vegetables don't kill you, unless they're poisoned.
This cartoon had the running gag that Riku is strangely attractive for a fish man.
Ooh, I see where they get that from.
It's like the precursor to handsome Squidward. And stop drooling over him, he's half fish.
And that's the part that I look at.
Eee.
Okay.